This Texans trade. I mean, the deeper I get into it, wow, this thing. I mean, I know the Texans don't have a GM, but it seems unjustifiable. Like, is this what? I find it hard to believe this really came from Bill O'Brien, though. So, for those that don't know, the Houston Texans decided to trade DeAndre Hopkins in a 4th-round pick to the Arizona Cardinals for David Johnson, a 2nd-round pick in this year's draft, and I believe a 3rd-round pick in next year's draft, or maybe it's a 4th-round pick. But the wild part about this is, so when I first saw this news yesterday, I immediately assumed that DeAndre Hopkins was nearing a payday, forgetting that he had just been paid. No, he has 3 years left on his deal. And then you go a step further and you see, okay, well, David Johnson, after he had that good season, what was it now, 3 years ago, back in 2016, he got a big contract. So they're taking on, David Johnson will count for $20 million against the Houston Texans cap this year.
It's got to be the worst trade in the last decade that I can recall in the NFL, and it may be further than that. I hate to speak in hyperbole and say that this is the worst ever. This is the worst I've ever seen. But when I read that come across my line yesterday, just the Twitter timeline, and opened it up and saw that, I thought, this is a hoax. Like, this is a joke. The fact that the Houston Texans give up a number 1 wide receiver, their number 1 wideout on their team that may be the best wide receiver in the league.
Yeah, so where does he rank? Right? Yes, I would
say that Mike Thomas, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham before last season were kind of
can't put Beckham in there
so
anymore.
Take Beckham out of that status. I got those 3 guys in Julio, Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins as the 3 elite wide receivers in the league.
Remember 2 years ago, DeAndre Hopkins didn't have a drop.
Did not drop a ball. He didn't drop a ball. I mean, just say that out loud and how tough that is to fathom. He didn't do that in an NFL. He didn't drop a pass in an NFL schedule 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, where he catches, where he's targeted constantly. He
and
catches
the more
over
that doesn't
balls.
make sense for me is that you've got a quarterback now and a franchise guy and Deshaun Watson under center, and all you're really looking for in a quarterback like him is some type of security blanket, right? Some type of comfort zone to a young quarterback that he feels like can bail himself out when he gets in trouble. This guy went to Clemson, DeAndre Hopkins, a class or 2 before Deshaun Watson got there, so they have the Clemson bloodline available. They have shown that they've had pretty good chemistry to the start of Deshaun Watson's career, and then they just bail on this guy.
Well, and I mean, and to kind of reinforce your point there, look at what Amari Cooper meant to Dak Prescott when he showed up. And granted, look, this can be a funny thing about hindsight. When the Cowboys made that trade and gave up that first for Cooper, a lot of us, we're kind of like, I mean, it wasn't this bad, but a lot were like, I don't know if that's a good move by Dallas. It ended up being a very good move. But yes, teams try to, if they believe in their quarterback, they try to provide for them with weapons around them. Look at who was it? The Bills going out and trading for Stephon Diggs. I felt like
Stephon Diggs wanted out of Minnesota because it was too cold. They sent him to Buffalo.
Yeah, that's a little dirty there. It's a little petty by the Vikings. But to me, that is the Bills saying we are committed to Josh Allen. And now he's got a receiving core with Stephon Diggs, John Brown, Cole Beasley. Like, that's a pretty solid NFL group there.
So what about salty defense on the other side?
What about this Texans team that looks like everything's moving in the right direction? Like you said, DeAndre Hopkins, probably a top 3 receiver, almost unanimously in the NFL at 27 years old.
Yes.
At 27 years old, 3 years left on his contract, a top 3 wide receiver. In the modern NFL, that's great. That's the type of player that you dream about having locked up and on your team, and then you trade him for a running back that's going to count you $20 million against the cap for a running back that's about to be 30 years old, which all the running back analytics say that's when everything falls apart. It's unfathomable. I mean, David Johnson's only rushed for over 1,000 yards once in 5 years.
He got paid off of it.
And
it's not been the same since.
Maybe not once in his career, but once in the last 5 years. But it's just I don't understand this. So Bill O'Brien is technically the Texans GM as well, but this is so seemingly nonsensical. There's something that we don't like. I feel like there's something more at play potentially here.
I don't want to speculate, but if you read local media around Houston, and it intrigued me so much when I saw it come across the line that I did a little digging.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on here? Why would Houston bail on DeAndre Hopkins at this point? And if you rewind a couple of years back, during the Kaepernick stuff, Hopkins was pretty outspoken about that. And it seemed like that rubbed Bob McNair the wrong way. I mean, just look at some of McNair's comments and what he's made in the past in being an NFL owner, and it kind of gives you his stance on how he feels, right? I mean, he's the one that made the comment a couple of years back, don't let the inmates from the asylum.
Like, Bob, what are we doing here, bruh?
So it seems like him and Hopkins never really came together. I mean, they never really on the same page. If that's the fact, if it was personal,
that's bad business.
Yeah, it's just bad business. But it makes more sense than anything. Like, if you want to just bail on him because you got some type of personal vendetta against him, that's fine. But just know in a business department, your responsibility from a business standpoint is to win football games, and this guy gives you the best chance to win.
I mean, it's wild. But it does get interesting from a Cardinal standpoint now, doesn't it, though? Because you have offensive rookie. You got Kyler Murray. He's now going to be throwing to DeAndre Hopkins and Larry Fitzgerald. Like, all right.
See Pat Pete's reaction?
No, what do you say? You got to be hyped, dude.
Iron sharpens iron. Come on down. I mean, he put out the YouTube of him going up against Hopkins a couple of years back. If you haven't seen it, go to Pat Pete's Twitter account. The one-on-one between those guys, you see how it motivates Peterson that day. Like in the pregame, he's mic'd up and he says, whenever I get a chance to go against a top 5 guy, you always going to get. I mean, he's like talking to himself.
Yeah, he's hyping himself up.
He's kind of hyping himself up, talking about going up against Hopkins. Now those two guys are teammates. Texans bring in Randall Cobb. Cobb, who spent last season in Dallas, spent the bulk of his career with Green Bay. They're thinking that Cobb can give some type of production to change.
I mean, Randall Cobb's a solid guy, but
he's a 2.
Yeah, that's
he's
the
a
thing.
Nice 2. He's a nice 2.
We're not talking about trading away a guy. We're talking about trading away a guy like the man, like a Mike Thomas type of talent. And it would have made sense if you didn't want to commit money to him. Like, it would have made sense from a lot of different angles. I just can't find the thread here as to how they arrived at this being a good idea.
Another free agent deal that stood out yesterday, Calais Campbell goes to the Baltimore Ravens for a 5th-round pick, and they pick up Michael Brockers also yesterday. Ravens right now.
How weird is this? 2 years ago, the Los Angeles Rams were the toast of the town. Everything was moving in the right direction. And then now my initial reaction when I saw this news was good for Brock getting out of Los Angeles. Because it's so funny, but it looks like a team that just committed to a couple of the wrong guys. The offensive line's looking weaker and weaker. It's just a little bit of the magic's gone. Like the Rams feel like a team that's already on the decline, and the road back does not appear to be very clear. And then he gets traded to Baltimore, where the complete opposite is true. You have the MVP in Lamar Jackson. Baltimore seems to be getting better and better. You mentioned Calais Campbell now teaming up with Brock. They got, I remember Daylon Mack. Yeah. Big fat boy from A&M. Yeah. Big guy, right? If he can get it going here in year number 2, that could be a pretty damn good Ravens D-line.
Saints lose A.J. Klein. Keep David Onyemata.
Yeah.
What was your reaction there?
I mean, I think A.J. Klein's been really good for the Saints. I'm not saying he's great. I don't know if you wanted to what was his deal? Do we have the deal in headlines?
Started 44 games for the Saints and signed a 3-year deal with Buffalo.
We don't know the numbers on that yet.
Numbers on it.
I mean, I guess that would kind of color a lot of my decision making. As it's like with the Mark Ingram signing in Baltimore last year. As soon as you got the numbers on
18 million.
18 million. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to cry too much over A.J. Klein. And if it came to who to keep between David Onyemata and A.J. Klein, I would absolutely side with David Onyemata. As we said, Onyemata is a project. I'll never forget. I talked to Joe Barksdale a few years ago, one of my old teammates at LSU, and at that point, he was going into year 8 in the NFL, and he told me, I feel like I just finally got it. Like, I'm just really getting football now. I understand what it takes in the NFL level. Well, that's a guy who still played football his entire life growing up. David Onyemata did not. As I said, I mean, he basically started playing 2 years before he was in the NFL. So even though he's been really good, his potential to get better and better, the ceiling remains stupid high on him. So, yeah, I'd take him over Klein.